So when you look at large infrastructure programs today, why do you think strong technical expertise alone doesn't already translate into successful project outcomes?
Even the nuance of the type of funding can impact the delivery. If you are getting federal funds, you have to understand the requirements such as Buy America or full proprietorship, or what is the approval process going to be? Different funding types carry, or different types of projects carry different approval levels. Engineering is a piece of the pie. And I'm not saying...
What if the biggest factor behind successful infrastructure projects isn't technical expertise? In the AEC industry, many assume the best engineers naturally become the best project managers, but complex infrastructure programs often prove otherwise. Delivering major projects requires a different kind of leadership that goes beyond engineering excellence. In this episode, I speak with Dana Hecht, PMP, Director of Program Delivery at H&H, who brings more than 3 decades of experience delivering transportation infrastructure programs for major agencies including NJDOT, NJ Transit, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and MTA Construction and Development. We'll talk about why technical expertise alone doesn't always lead to successful project outcomes, how the idea of program delivery reshapes the way we think about managing infrastructure projects, and the ongoing debate around whether project managers need to be licensed engineers. If you're an engineer, project manager, or firm leader looking to strengthen project outcomes and lead more successful infrastructure programs, this conversation will challenge some long-held assumptions and offer practical insights you can apply right away. Before we jump in, I want to tell you about AEC PM Connect, a series of in-person events we've created at EMI for AEC project managers and the leaders who develop them. If you want to stay on top of PM trends, elevate your team, and deliver stronger project results, these full-day events are built for you. Learn more and register at aecpmconnect.com. I'm your host, Fiona Johan, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. Let's jump right in. It's now time for our PM Conversation of the Week with Dana Hecht, PMP. Dana, welcome to the AEC PM podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. I thought we could start with you telling our listeners a bit about yourself and how you got started delivering major transportation infrastructure programs.
So I've been in the industry now for almost 35 years. I spent 33 years on the public side, the majority at NJDOT for over 26 years. And then I meandered through NJ Transit, Port Authority, and MTA. So through all of that, I've done portfolio type programs for state of good repair on the highway side and the rail side. And I've done mega project program delivery for transit and bus type projects. So vast experience. How I ended up there, I just honestly landed there. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to design homes. Went to school for architecture. That was also a meandering path. Took me 6 years to graduate. Temple was my third college. It was community college. Went to University of Arizona for a few weeks. Landed at Temple, and realized even back then, architecture, or I should say back then, I don't know if it still is, it was a very artsy curriculum. And you had to be able to draw freehand, of which I could not. So I went to an advisor at Temple and said, I don't want to be an engineer. I don't know what to do. If I can't be an architect, I want to manage large residential home sites. Now, this is back in the late 80s when project management was not necessarily a thing. It wasn't a buzzword. But there was a program at Temple University, which I think nowadays would be coined construction management engineering. But then it was civil and construction engineering technology. So I did have design courses, but I also had scheduling, I had estimating, I had various types of management sprinkled in with engineering courses. In retrospect, those were the courses that I enjoyed the most. Those were the courses that I did the best in, but I still did not know what I was going to do with this degree. I really felt like I was going to manage residential home sites. I had met with a company, a large residential builder in Pennsylvania area, Bucks County area, when I was in college. But because it took me longer, it was 1991, it was a recession, and that came to a halt. And so did most building. And so I actually was doing 1 hour film developing. 6 years, got my degree, 1 hour film developing. And the advice of my father, just keep sending out the resumes. Eventually something will stick. And not a little more eloquent than the words he used of what would stick. But I got a call from NJDOT in 1991. We're very familiar. We talk about the IIJA infrastructure bill that came out and had a lot of funding. In 1991, it was ICE-T. It was one of the largest bills. And so NJDOT was doing a mass hiring to infuse and bring in civil engineer trainees. Again, still didn't know what I wanted to do. It was a rotation program. They ended the program prior to being able to do my 6 months in design, 6 months in construction. I really was more interested on the construction side. I had worked on construction sites during college. So to make a long story still long, they reorganized. I started in 1991. I was in planning. That's where I ended up when they ended the program. Planning was not for me. So I got my real estate degree, my real estate license. But then when they reorganized in 1996 to truly a project management centric organization, and I say that because the capital side has a division of project management, and everyone on a project is matrixed to the PM for that project. And they did this in 1996. And so I actually was offered to work in project management or on the capital funding side. And I chose the capital funding side because they were able to explain what I would be doing if I went there. It was still a little fuzzy on the project management side. That ended up to be one of the best. Sitting in progress meetings for every single kind of project in a public agency that delivers infrastructure, I learned what impacted a project schedule for better or for worse. How can you accelerate? What are the snafus? What are the obstacles? What affects an estimate? I learned the difference between a capital project and the operating and maintenance side. And then at NJDOT, you have the local aid program. So again, had its own set of challenges. It was a grant program, so we would track the progress of those projects. But again, different types of challenges. So I really, really learned, as someone just recently told me, I learned how to deliver. And I spent 8 years in that particular group. And I also learned the nuances with state funds, with federal funds, the different types of federal funds, and even how the funding can impact delivery. We always think about the engineering, but these are all the other things. So I got the opportunity to move over to project management in 2004, of which that's where I grew up. I was there until I left NJDOT in 2018. When I left there, I was in charge of their division of project management. And I left because my husband's job transferred. I loved that role. That role allowed the programmatic thinking to get involved on a project level when necessary, being very strategic. And I parlayed that. I wasn't ready to leave the public side, and I still loved project delivery. So I worked on Portal Bridge for 6 months leading that. And then I had the opportunity to go to Port Authority, where I led path extension and bus terminal. But what I realized after 3.5 years of working on mega projects is I really, really did love the portfolio state of good repair projects. I felt like they were very undervalued, but they are truly the backbone, or as people say, the non-sexy projects. But, I always talk about if you are a driver to work on an interstate that has a lot of potholes, filling potholes and repaving roadways are very important for safety, for quality of life. Every project has its merit. So I had the opportunity with MTA to lead a $10 billion state of good repair program that supported New York City Transit, the Staten Island Rail, and the New York City buses. So that's how I ended up. And after 33 years, I decided to take my perspective from the agency side and try to bring that to the private side to help on the private side, bring this perspective into it and help with working with the agencies as well.
I love that story. There's a lot of cool things I heard in there. And the one thing I heard that really I think will resonate with others and resonates with me is the fact that you just had an opportunity to observe and learn so many things early on and really absorb all that and turn it into project management, which is, I feel like, is so important as project managers to sit and listen.
Yeah. It was, I feel like sometimes I do feel like it probably took me a little bit longer, but when I sit in meetings and I realize the breadth of the experience and scenarios that I got to just, as you said, sit and listen to and be a part of, um, it really, I see how fortunate I was versus others that didn't have that same opportunity at that type of portfolio level.
Yeah, to have that amount of context when you're making decisions down the line is hugely valuable.
Right, which I believe we'll get into versus the technical.
Right, absolutely. So when you kind of moving towards the large infrastructure programs piece, so when you look at large infrastructure programs today, why do you think strong technical expertise alone doesn't already translate into successful project outcomes?
From the things that we've talked about, right? Even the nuance of the type of funding can impact the delivery. If you are getting federal funds, you have to understand the requirements such as Buy America or well proprietorship, or what is the approval process going to be? Different funding types carry, or different types of projects carry different approval levels. Engineering is a piece of the pie. And I'm not saying you shouldn't I feel like there's technical expertise and there's technical aptitude. So a PM most certainly needs to have the technical aptitude. You need to know, and I say the project manager or program manager, if you're working at a portfolio level, it's just equally as important. You need to have the technical aptitude so you understand what questions to ask. You understand where you're equipped to make the decision or where you're not equipped, but you know who to go to, right? That's equally as important, what you do not know. There were many times where I would make notes of something technical, very, very technical engineering, and go back and research it or set up a one-on-one for somebody to sit with me and walk me through so that the next time maybe I'll know to have what question I need to ask but a PM doesn't need to know everything. The other thing, I think there's a misnomer that when you have to have a professional engineer, you have to have that technical expert being the project manager, except that typically an engineer is an SME of one discipline, and projects have multiple engineering disciplines. So nobody thinks about the fact that they have all the other type of engineering matrix to them to help make the decision, to help guide the technical. And that PM, honestly, whatever their technical expertise is on that, that's not their role on that project. So, for example, if you have somebody that used to be a structural engineer being the PM, functioning as the PM now on a project, they still have a structural engineer on the project team because they have a different role. So the snags in delivering projects is usually not engineering. Engineers are brilliant and can engineer their way out of anything. Contractors out in the field can figure out their way how to construct anything. You run into a snag politically, you don't know how to deal with your stakeholders, whether internally, like in a rail agency, with handing over to the operating agency, delivering for the operating agency what they need and want, you're not going to deliver your project anyway. And if you don't take certain things into consideration up front, your engineering can get impacted anyway. The best engineering solution isn't always the best project solution.
I really like that.
So engineering is a major important component of the project, but it is a component of the project. And so that needs to be recognized when choosing a PM that has an aptitude but has the other skills necessary to deliver the project.
I love that. I heard you say you need to know who to ask, right? I actually had a first grade teacher that said you don't have to know all the answers, you just need to know where they are. It feels friend project management, I feel like that comes up all the time is I don't actually know the answer, but I do know that I need the answer and I know where to go find it. And that is just so crucial because like you said, just because you're a structural engineer, there's a structural engineer on this project who actually has really focused on that for this project. Don't rely on your structural engineering thoughts alone, right? Just because you have that background. I think that's so critical.
Well, and you're a structural engineer as a PM now on this project, and drainage can get very complicated. So you need to know what to ask, who to ask, and even though you're the ultimate decision maker, you also need to know when to defer that decision making.
Yeah, that's so critical.
Strong leadership drives strong projects. Become an AEC PM professional and give your team the leadership skills they need to thrive. Customized PM development, premium content, and a leadership edge that sets you apart. Learn more at aecpm.com.
When you mentioned program delivery versus project management. So when you define program delivery, or how do you specifically define program delivery, and why do you prefer that term over traditional project management?
Again, I feel like even project delivery versus project management, I feel like project management, again, is an aspect of project delivery. Project management is managing scope, schedule, budget. You still have engineering, right? So I feel like delivery for me is the umbrella term. Program delivery is beyond just a single project. So having managed individual projects and programs, program being leading, quite a few hundred where it's literally a program, or bus terminal where it was a program of contracts. But I'm going to go back to the leading a group that was delivering a few hundred projects. Resource management is critical for program delivery. So again, it goes back to not just the technical. Now this is the agency side, not necessarily the private side. If I'm an agency person that is managing a program, an infrastructure program delivery, I have to be looking at my internal resources, my external resources. What are things that are consistent snags in delivery? What are best practices that can be applied across? And an example, like when I was at NJDOT, pavement is a big focus there, obviously. Pavement from a preventative maintenance perspective, mill to pave to reconstructions. But the projects that are like the mill to pave to and the preventative maintenance, the shelf life for those designs, they're not really large because pavement condition can change. They're not really long. Guide rail, believe it or not, can have utilities under it, can be in a historic area. You can run into stormwater. So we were finding that guide rail many times was elongating the schedule for delivering the pavement, not the design. And I met with our federal highway office, and there was someone at DOT at the time that was also building out a program of all the guide rail that needed to be upgraded. We came together and we approached FHWA and asked them if we put together a program to address guide rail programmatically, and we have guide rail in the pavement project, and it's going to elongate the delivery time frame to literally get it out on the street. Can we proceed with the pavement portion if we show you that it's part of a program and we will be replacing the guide rail? And with the same time, what we also built out was a guide rail GIS system that could be used both by the operating side and the capital side, again, for efficiency and delivery, knowing what was up to standard, what had to. So programmatically, this eased burden on the requirements of individual projects. The federal highway at the time did agree that, yes, if you demonstrate that you will be taking care of that in a future project, you can go ahead and take care of the pavement. So that's where I talk about program. That's an example of program management at a portfolio level. When I was at MTA, we still had in-house design, but we didn't have enough in-house design to keep up with the designs and the needs. So working with my in-house design manager of let's look programmatically of what can we handle in-house and what's the efficient, creative way now to, instead of individual solicitations. So we actually we pooled all the leftover designs together and put that out as one solicitation. So these are all ways to enhance the delivery of individual projects that does not focus on the engineering, but take a step back and look programmatically at where your obstacles are. And I also do like to get into, like I said, best practices. Find the things that are working and do trainings on them. We did those types of things at NJDOT as well. Things that are working well from a delivery perspective that can be transferable. These are all ways to enhance the technical expertise that our industry is so chock full of, to reducing risk of getting the much needed improvements out on the street.
That's great. And I really like that systems level approach and the way of thinking. I really like the positive. That's always what's working. How can everyone else learn from that?
Well, and I've also seen sometimes program managers they manage individual projects. And that's why I specify sometimes taking a step back and looking at programmatic obstacles, programmatic best practices, programmatic lessons learned, and how do you apply them. So if you're managing a program, don't just look at your individual projects.
I love that. And when we're thinking about these large infrastructure projects, what are some of the common misunderstandings about the role of a project manager?
One of the things is I think sometimes people think just because you say someone is a PM, right? Like I have a civil engineering degree. I don't consider myself a civil engineer.
Touché.
I didn't train for that when I came out of school. So I don't think you can just say someone is a project manager. I think there is trainings. There's just like there's aptitudes and skill sets you need to be a strong engineer. There are skill sets and aptitudes that you need to be a project manager. So I think that's a misconception that I see on both sides, public and private, is you say someone, people just, they somehow end up in that role because that's the next natural step. But is it really the right step? I think the other thing is the organization really set up, again, private and public side, is the organization really set up for the project manager to be truly empowered and accountable? Can they truly be the decision maker? Is there governance? Again, just because you say someone's a project manager, they have a PE, they're an engineer. That's a big misconception to me, is that number one, you have to be a PE. I don't agree with that at all. I'm not a PE. I do wish, because of the industry I'm in, that I got my PE. It's on my bucket list. I'm going to be 60 in 14 months. That's my bucket list, is to have my PE by 60. But why? Think about that. Why do I even feel that way? Because it's so ingrained in us.
Because everyone's got it after their name. I want one too.
Right. It's so ingrained in us. And you don't need the PE to be a great project manager. And we need to make sure that people are being set up for success. So I think that, to me, outside of all the technical stuff, the delivery stuff, it is the organizational. Is it the right person in the right role? And is the organization truly set up for that person to be empowered to make decisions? Because I've seen it on both sides where they're not. And the other thing is, you really a PM does not need to have a lot of direct reports. Project management, but the way it's supposed to be to work successfully, it's a matrix organization. So again, I go back to, is the organization set up for the PM to be successful? They own the project. They own the decision making. There needs to be governance for when things need higher level decision making. Without that governance, sometimes the PM doesn't know, so they elevate everything or they become stifled.
Yeah, the PM role is so unique too because a lot of them don't have direct reports, but they are in charge of making sure we all get to our destination on time. That's a delicate line to walk.
Right, and that's where the leadership skills come in of understanding that even though someone's not a direct report to you, but for the project they are.
Mm-hmm.
You are in charge of the project and you are in charge of the project team. So therefore, for the project, yes, they are matrix to you and you are in charge.
Yeah. And so, you just talked about leadership capabilities. Which ones do you think tend to make the biggest difference between projects that struggle and those that are delivered successfully?
So one of my favorite examples, I was just telling somebody, and I'm not going to mention the agency I was at the time, but I took over a project and this particular group delivered for operating. But this particular group was not so seen favorably. They were seen as just ramming things down the operating group's throat. So I started there and I was always, you have to bring everyone to the table. It's about delivering a project and it's about, the the project manager is the ultimate decision maker, but they're not the dictator. It's about being able to take in all the information and understand the overall need of the project so you can make the best decision given all of those. So we were coming up to a big submission. I thought, oh, let's do an onboard. Let's get everyone to the table. And what I was met with because of the paradigm from before of they ram everything down our throat, that they're just rushing us to a decision, where I thought I'm bringing everyone to the table for like an onboard so that everyone can hear and we could work together and get to know the perspectives. And I didn't realize because of the paradigm that they were going to see it much differently. But now I had that context. And so worked on that and approached that as the program lead. And a year later, within a year, working with the operations group, they said this was the best project team they had ever worked with. So I think it's the skill set of understanding your stakeholders, of understanding where the risks are. Like we said before, knowing what you don't know and who to go to. Yes, have to have enough technical aptitude, but it's so the skill sets, it's really the softer side. Projects are obstacle courses. That's how I see them. They're obstacle courses.
I like that.
And each obstacle is different. You have to approach each obstacle different. And every project, a community in one project, their needs and their reactions may be much different in another project. And you have to be able to understand that and assess that up front on how much you're going to mitigate that. Again, how do you work to bring people to the table? And consensus isn't getting everyone to agree with everything. Consensus is getting everyone to keep the project moving forward. So the other thing from being on the agency side for so long and seeing sometimes that it could get into where PMs and the consultant and contractor teams are now in this circle of executing a contract. And once you get into that mold, that is never good so a leadership skill is having a team that is focused on delivering the project versus executing a contract.
And so, in delivering these major programs, what practices do you think help teams improve collaboration between agencies and consultants and contractors and not just executing a contract, but delivering something?
Again, some of it comes down to, is the PM truly empowered? Is the PM that they have the right trainings? Do they have processes, the policies and procedures to help them with staying out of that from the agency side, executing the contract. On the consultant contractor side, the agency is your client, and if you're really running into issues, elevate it within your company. Understand when it's starting to get that way. But I think, from the PM has to be the one that keeps that ship heading in that direction. And again, even programmatically, right? That's where I talk about when I said the person that is leading the program, whether it's from a higher level leadership, from a program leadership, it's ensuring that the proper trainings, conflict resolution, things like that, the softer side. Having always had to rely on the technical experts to support all these other things necessary. I know, like I said, from an industry perspective, we are so strong with engineers. Well, we need more to keep coming into our industry.
We need more of them.
We need more.
But the
and
ones that are here are pretty great.
Exactly. But where I see I think we're starting as an industry to really, because of losing resources, because of things getting more and more expensive, and understanding efficiencies is how we're going to deliver more, that we are starting to value these things, people that can keep the project moving, but we need to value those skill sets of conflict resolution, facilitating. Facilitation, that's what a PM is. They're facilitating the project. And I think that is relationships, being able to communicate and knowing how you communicate with whom. When you need to communicate to senior level leadership, whether it's in the contractor consultant side, because things might be going awry, to keep it from getting into that executing a contract. And on the public side, same thing. Are you communicating to senior leadership? Are you communicating externally? Are you communicating to who you're handing the project over? You need to know the right level, the right amount of information, and the right tone. Though that can become a huge inhibitor.
That managing up piece is critical.
Yes.
Yeah. I think those are important takeaways when you're moving from, an engineering role to that leadership role. Those are all really good things to start thinking about and enacting, or start reading some books on if they're not your natural state, right? Because there's so much more than just knowing the technical pieces. Like you said, all those leadership, those soft skills, they never stop.
And there is so much out there now on construction management, project management, right? The art of it. It's an art and a science.
Gotta have a little bit of that artistic ability, which it sounds like you actually did. But you mentioned the architecture in the beginning, right?
Yes.
So if you are a leader listening today, if they could improve one thing to strengthen project outcomes, where should they start?
Make sure you have the right people in the right role. Simply, I think that is so important. Are people enjoying what they want to do? Are they a square peg in a round hole? I also feel, some things I've heard both on the public side and the private side is I have to become a PM if I want to keep my career moving up. So do we as an industry have to find a way to keep the people that love the technical side, that's their strength and it's not these other things that we're talking about? How do we still allow them a career path that's not going to make them feel like they have to be forced to go into project management?
That's so important.
I remember seeing people that loved being out in the field. They loved being resident engineers. They loved being construction managers, come in to be a PM, and they were not good PMs. And I'm talking generally, because they like quick decision making. They got frustrated with process. And we know delivering a project, there is a lot of bullshit that
we can't make that decision today because there's about 3 more decisions tomorrow that are going to affect that. So we're going to have to hold.
Or I have to talk to we have to go meet with DEP or the community, right? So I just think it is so important, regardless of anyone in any role of what they're doing, but particularly the project is a team sport. So don't try to make the kicker a quarterback.
I like that a lot. I think that's really important. We talk about that a lot with, we have accidental project managers. They're great technically, and they're like, that's how I can keep moving in my career. And they
Yeah.
hate it. Like you said, why do something you're not enjoying?
Right. And so it's actually something at one of the agencies that I was at was really trying to figure out what is a role that we can have for someone, not a good PM, but a hell of a technical person that allows them to still have a career, have a ladder to move up to. So I think that is something we need to figure out, and not just slide them over into a role that they don't enjoy, it's not their skill set, and it's going to negatively impact the program delivery.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. I really value all the input you had. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you very much. It was fun. I appreciate it.
Good. That's always the goal. Well, have a lovely day. Thanks.
Thanks, you too.
Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aecpmpodcast.com. There you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as any links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all of your engineering project management endeavors.